It's with great pleasure that I introduce this next talk on how the Cartoon Museum saves the planet. So introducing our speakers, Joe Sullivan, Director, Holly Burrows, the Commercial Manager from the Cartoon Museum. Please give a warm welcome.
Hi everyone, can you all hear me? Yeah, cool. It's weird because I can barely hear me because it's such a noisy room. So the first thing I just want to very, very quickly say is if you come here hoping that we've already saved the planet and you get to stop, that's unfortunately not the case. The planet is still a bit screwed, but we're doing what we can to try and make it better. My name's Joe, I'm the museum's director. And
I'm Holly, I'm the commercial manager.
We're going to talk a little bit about some of the work we've been doing in the past year and a half to try to make the museum and the activities we do and the way we communicate with our visitors a little bit more sustainable and try to hopefully influence people into being more sustainable themselves. So just for a tiny bit of context, and I've put up a nice fun cartoon from an exhibition for you to look at while it's the benefit of being a cartoon museum is we can put cartoons in our talk slides. We are in the centre of London. We're over by Oxford Circus in Westminster. We moved there in 2019. The Cartoon Museum has a collection of about 5,000 items, cartoons, comics, caricature, animation. We recently collected a meme, which is really cool. And a lot of our kind of work is around using cartoons, using art to encourage people to connect with social issues. One of the great things about cartoons is they hold the powerful to account. We want to use that as a really kind of driving force of our collection to connect with our visitors. So, yes, this is a little bit of kind of prep. So a 2021 survey across 10 countries ahead of COP26 identified 62% of people that were surveyed understood that the climate was a proper emergency and was a really serious thing we need to consider. Probably should be more than 62%, but 62%. 51% of those said they'd actually act to do anything about it. 76% of all of those surveyed said they'd accept rules. So if the government came down and said, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to recycle, that's absolutely fine. But less than half, if they actually was just left up to them, wouldn't do anything about it at all. So this is the kind of context that we were starting to work in when we started designing an exhibition we'll talk about in a second. Yes. And this is a bit of context to why we decided to do that. Why us? Why are we, or anyone, best place to do that? Museums are incredibly trusted places, right? Donald Trump is going around lying about things and, you know, that's absolutely fine. People seem to tolerate that. I don't know why. But museums, people trust. They trust us, they trust our expertise, and they trust the things that we say, which means we're in a really unique position to communicate with the people coming into the museums or just engaging with anything we do online about the topics that we are talking about. It means we've got, at least in my opinion, a real responsibility to make sure we're talking about serious issues and try to connect with people using our platform. I'm just going to actually tell you, this is my daughter, it's my 3-year-old daughter. We put our new strategy together in 2020, moving into 2023. What we wanted to do is encourage our visitors to pick up a pencil and draw, and to really understand that by doing that, they can challenge the powerful like cartoonists can. Alongside that, we were working to reflect the demographics that were changing from our move into a new area, and also the effects of the pandemic, which saw a lot of our older, more traditional visitors stop visiting. And also, because we're in a new area, we wanted to establish partnerships with people and organisations that were really hyper-local to us. What I'm basically saying is that sustainability work is not a part of our strategy. There was no rationale for us to go, we should try and do this, we should talk about these issues, we should hold ourselves to account. It's not part of our strategy. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. What we tried to look at is how we can holistically challenge these issues and try to contribute to a better planet by achieving our other aims. And essentially, what we're trying to say is we say yes to things. When there's an opportunity to do things, we try to say yes. And I will be really clear, this is a benefit of being a small museum, okay? So we have like 6 members of staff. We're a very small museum, 26,000 visitors a year. We lose money every single year. And I've worked at national museums, I've worked at the Natural History Museum, places like that, where it's quite hard to just say yes to things. So I just want to be really clear. We're in a slightly privileged position to be able to say yes, but that means we're trying to use that privileged position to do that. So we try to have everyday sustainable activities as just part of our daily practice. And some of these are just by making simple decisions. So, for instance, some of you might know that emails are actually a huge contributor to emissions because of all the systems and servers and things that generate heat when they're running. So we set, as part of our strategic targets for all staff last year, you must reduce your emails by 5%. A really simple thing to do as part of our KPIs. One of the really unintended things that we learned about that was that out-of-office emails completely torpedo it if you have part-time staff who then have an auto out-of-office saying, I only work 2 days a week, and suddenly their email usage goes massively up. So it tells you things very, very quickly. You start learning these. We had training for staff and for volunteers about how we could be more energy efficient. Simple things: turn the lights off, change the timings on our aircon so that it's not on when we're not in the museum, and trying to empower staff with interest and knowledge around green issues. And I think this was a really key point for me. I think I'll quite happily put my hand up and say I don't know everything about the climate emergency and green issues. Holly does. Holly has worked around this stuff, is really interested in it. So it's really important for me to empower people like Holly who have that real expertise and knowledge and interest. So we appointed Holly as our Green Guardian. She's like our Green Champion, but we wanted to make it sound more like a superhero because we're the Cartoon Museum. We wanted to work with groups that were doing kind of green-related activities, working on climate change projects for schools, and also using local suppliers for our events and our hires, making sure if we could walk to collect the food, great. If we can walk to collect our graphics, great. That means we're cutting out part of the supply chain. One of the main things we did is we signed up for the Mayor's Business Climate Challenge. So this was an initiative across London, in different London boroughs, where businesses came together to try to lower their energy usage by 10%. So there's a hard goal by the end of the year. You had to hit a 10% reduction. And really, really eye-opening thing for this, but for me at least, was that it was quite simple for us to do that. So we way hit our target. I think we reduced by 16%. And it was mainly by just changing the settings on our aircon. That was pretty much it, because we had consultation as part of this, and someone came around and looked at our lights and went, well, you're a new building, they're all LEDs. Oh, you're a basement, so you haven't got stuff disappearing off through the windows. We're kind of pretty energy efficient anyway, and we could still make a reduction. So that was really interesting. Another really eye-opening thing for me was just openly saying business isn't a bad thing. It's not bad to have a museum or have a shop or whatever it is. It's not bad that people want to buy products. That's absolutely fine. Business could continue. We just need to try to make sure we're as sustainable as possible while doing that. And the other thing is, and some of you again will know this, there's a difference between primary emissions, the ones that you actively create, and obviously we don't burn coal at our museum, the ones that are a secondary kind of thing through your supply chain, and tertiary emissions. Tertiary emissions are all of the things that people who engage with your products or your services go off and do beyond you, right? We can't control that. Well, we've got 26,000 visitors a year. Say you're the British Museum, you've got 5 million a year. You can't be responsible for that. So it's really important to acknowledge the things you can do, the things you can be responsible for, because it helps you actively make those changes when you identify the things you can do. And as part of this work, we ended up putting into our new strategy we're working on that will launch this year, an environmental statement. So even though up to this point we've been doing this work without strategy behind it, we're now building it into our strategy to do that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about an exhibition that kind of spearheaded this. Norman Thelwell Saves the Planet. Norman Thelwell was a cartoonist in the 60s and 70s. He published a book in 1971 called The Effluent Society, which was looking at pollution in the rivers, looking at the destruction of the countryside. We launched that exhibition in the week where all of the stories broke in the news about the government pumping sewage into the sea, and those brilliant shots from above of just brown sea spreading out of pipes was happening. That was the week we launched. It showed us that 50 years on, it was exactly the same issues, exactly the same things happening. And we needed to communicate that with people and find a way for people to acknowledge, we can't let it keep happening. So this exhibition used those cartoons to try to engage directly with visitors about this. And what we tried to do is take our vision, encourage people to pick up a pencil and draw something, and link that to social issues. So that self-expression kind of manifested in these, if you can see, little black text panels, little tiny black text panels underneath some of the cartoons. So the exhibition was arranged into different themes, but we had these kind of prompts around them relating to the cartoons that would encourage people to think and go away and draw. So in the animals one, for instance, there were some cartoons on battery farm chickens, and the little plate was, what have you done that's bad to an animal? What nasty things you've done to animals? Have you crushed flies? How could you do better next time? How could you try to be nicer next time? And encourage people to go away and draw and think about their actions and how they affect other places. So these are the kinds of things, just a couple of examples that people created as a response. So GM cows that have got way more milk in, or people plugging themselves into trees from their bum in the future. Just people who've got weird brains. The Kitty Genovese syndrome, where people hashtag and tweet looking at their building at someone being mugged, or a duck being fired out of a cannon, right? So people are really creative and they respond to things in slightly different ways. I've just realized I'm standing in people's eye lines here, sorry for this screen. People drawing cartoons about AI taking over the world and people then filming it with their smartphones, or who lives in a house under the sea in London. Everyone in the future. Like, people are creative when you kind of put cartoons and fun things in front of them and ask them to reflect, sometimes on their own behavior or where they think our actions are actually leading us to. One of the other things we did as part of the exhibition is try to really acknowledge the people we work with. So we actively sought out sustainable partners across our exhibition, our graphics, our shop, and we wanted to highlight the people we were working with. We prioritize using local suppliers. And we also really understood by doing this process, searching out people online, trying to find out who was sustainable. A lot of sustainable suppliers have no idea how to calculate their own carbon footprint. So therefore, do you trust that they're a sustainable supplier? It also led us to a really great partnership with a company called Yes Colours, who provided the paint for the exhibition completely free. Our next exhibition, all the paint was completely free. They're a sustainable paint company. Paint for us is about a third of our exhibition budget because we're such a small museum. So it really made a difference looking for the right suppliers, people that wanted to invest in us because of our values and the kind of work we were doing. So we wanted to hold ourselves to account. One of the other things we did is we published the footprint of making the exhibition. These are the emissions caused by us putting this show on for you to enjoy. So as a tiny kind of case study within this, what we did is we used sustainable materials, as I've mentioned, for the exhibition, including our graphics. Now, we'd usually use plastic-based graphics, vinyl graphics going on the wall or whatever it might be. We decided, right, we're not going to use unsustainable tape or unsustainable plastic graphics. We're going to use eco-graphics. And they constantly peeled off the wall. So this constantly the letters are just crinkling, falling off, and we're having to constantly smooth them out. Or the panels we had stuck to the wall with the text on them would just fall, and then they'll get dented and smashed up, and we put them back on the wall. And it worked fine for this exhibition because we could communicate to people, this is why they're always falling off the wall and they're a bit bashed up, or whatever it might be, because we're trying to do a really good thing. What we did learn from it is that it was not sustainable for us going forward because the quality was not high enough. The technology isn't there yet. So my point is it's sometimes fine to try to do things in the best intentions and understand, okay, sometimes it doesn't work. It doesn't work for you for whatever reason it might be. So sometimes you do have to make sustainable decisions. That's kind of okay as long as you understand why you're doing it. And hopefully technology improves, we can go back to that in the future. We're at least aware, we've tried these things, and we can kind of understand the impact of it. So I'm going to hand over to Holly to talk about the shop products related to the exhibition.
So I'm Holly, the commercial manager at the Cartoon Museum. And as Joe said, I've always had an interest in ecological stuff. Even when I was a child, like if someone cut down a tree, I would cry about it, still do. And over lockdown, I did a quick kind of online course in environmental justice, which was really transformative in how I thought about things. The image is one of Norman Thelwell's sketchbooks, really beautiful drawings of birds and the countryside. So this exhibition, it also was an opportunity for me to kind of hold myself to account, because if I believe in all this stuff, was I actually doing it within my job? And then actually, ultimately, the problem as well is my job is about making stuff and selling it to people who are putting it somewhere. Eventually, it's going to end up in landfill, I guess. So the actual most sustainable thing would be for my job to not exist at all and for no one to buy anything. But obviously, there's reasons why that's a bit difficult. We still need to generate income for the museum. And like Joe was saying, we still need to kind of do business. So then I thought, well, actually, it's about how can I do it in such a way that's kind of as good as possible? Because there's a possibility if, I don't know, someone else was doing the job who wasn't as interested, they might not care as much about all this kind of stuff. So I thought, okay, starting point, I'll see the suppliers that I use already to make merchandise for this exhibition, and I'll have a look and see, do they have a kind of green strategy or anything like that? And these are 3 companies which I've used for years and years in previous jobs as well. So I was hoping that they would come out really well. And as it happened, they did. So as you can see, these are all from their websites. They're all doing loads and loads of stuff to kind of try and make the way that they work really sustainable. So they're all UK based, so the transport is not very big. It's all like looking at organic materials, ethical, recycling waste, and just kind of having a consciousness so that they're improving all the time. I was thinking as well, because there's some like debate about kind of planting trees. And I think the Star Edition saying that they're planting 500 trees every month is really impressive. But then I realised that actually with these tree planting kind of things, you actually do have to plant a lot of trees because a lot of them die if they're not looked after. So maybe that does make sense actually. And then alongside the companies that I was already using to make our own merchandise, I was also buying in merchandise for the shop as well. And so I obviously had to make sure that the brands I was using were also sustainable. So we've got Countryside Greetings, who make a lot of kind of more traditional Norman Thelwell merchandise. I really liked on their sort of green strategy that they'd actually created a wildlife pond, which I haven't seen anywhere else. I thought that was brilliant. We've got Eleanor Drew This, who is one of the green grads, who I'll talk about a bit later. She's a textile artist, and she also makes zines, which are like kind of small self-published booklets or comics or that kind of thing. And she'd done one about climate change. And then we've got Herd bags. So all of their bags are made from recycled materials. And at the end of their life, you can send them back to them and they get recycled again. And my kind of little thing that I'm proud about is I found them online quite a few years ago, and I was the first retailer to have them in a physical store. So that was good. And also I really recommend them. I have one myself. They're really brilliant. So we also stocked Julian Payne's work. So I actually found that there's not that many cartoonists who have done stories and things about climate change. There's lots of things that are based in the countryside. So his stories are based in the countryside. Then we've got Michelle Freeman, who does a lot of work again about nature. There's also this anthology, Drawn Together, which she put together, and it's kind of women's stories and connecting with nature. The question mark was, so I'll explain that. There was one supplier, and I was talking to the sales rep, and he obviously wanted to sell me stuff for that exhibition. I was mostly talking to him about the exhibition that's coming after. And I said to him, is any of this merchandise sustainable, green? And he actually laughed at me and went, no. So I thought, great, that's not very helpful. And I thought, shall I name and shame them in this talk? And then I realised that I didn't want to, because firstly, they've been very financially beneficial to us. They've kept the shop going. They've been very helpful to us in terms of if I've needed something quickly, they've made an effort to kind of get it to us in time. But I also kind of wanted to use that as an example of a reason why we don't hold people to account, because there's these kind of like politics, I guess, going on. And it can be very difficult, especially if you are a small organisation, to challenge that kind of thing. I have to say that since that conversation, they have actually made quite big changes. So they don't have plastic in their packaging anymore. And if you read the sides of the packaging, there's quite a lot of information about things that they're doing or elements of the products which are more eco-friendly. So one of the things that I wanted to do is make badges, because we sell loads and loads of badges. It's a really good kind of income generator for us. And I was like, okay, I need to find some eco-friendly badges. And it took quite a long time, and eventually I found some. And they're the three on the top, which are bigger. So they're to scale, but not obviously that size, but they were quite big. And I kind of thought, will people buy them? Because people like obviously smaller badges to wear on their coats and jackets and that kind of thing. But the big badges, they are recyclable. You can put them in your compost. They're like biodegradable. You can reuse the metal. So they're really, really good. They're like the best badges you could possibly get. But then I thought I'll use this as an opportunity. So all of the stuff that I had in the shop, I made signs for, which explained why it was kind of sustainable or eco. And I had the badges next to each other. And the big badges, I said they're really like the most sustainable badges you can get, next to the normal size badges, which were just normal badges. And I was like, right, let's see. What are people going to buy? But then there's these stats. 42% of people are willing to pay more for longer lasting products. 33% of people consider plastic content when making a purchase, and 50% don't think they have enough information to make an informed decision. Well, I gave people all of the information they needed. Did people make that informed decision? No, they didn't. They bought the normal badges. And basically what I conclude from that is, don't give people the choice, because people make the wrong choices for multiple reasons. Like, we all do it all the time. It's like the other day on my social media was like ranting about Coca-Cola. Literally the next day I went and bought a can of Coke. So it's like, don't give people that choice. So the Green Grads, who I mentioned earlier, are a group of graduates which grows every year, and they're all graduates who have been creating things which will basically help the planet, literally. So for example, someone's invented a paint which is sort of made from algae, and it absorbs CO2, which if you painted buildings near roads could obviously be amazing. And I'll just read out what it says on there. So it's like, what we do: the aim of Green Grads is to identify, promote and enable a new generation of UK graduate eco-activists, linking them with manufacturers, design practices, shops, galleries, the media, internet and the general public at large. So I really wanted to work with them. That's them at Grand Designs Live, meeting Kevin MacLeod. He seems to really like them. And so we held an event with them, and it was like always really important to make sure that whatever we do, we bring it back to our kind of core audience, and picking up a pencil and drawing. So what we did was we brought in the Green Grads, we invited cartoonists, and we invited the general public to come for an evening. We had a bar, and basically to chat to each other. So the Green Grads would explain their ideas, the public and the cartoonists would draw them, and it would help the Green Grads understand how to explain what they were doing to like the layperson, and everyone else would also learn about all of these amazing ideas. We obviously had to try and make it really sustainable. All the waste was recyclable. I did look into getting organic wine. It was completely unaffordable for us. And then that at the bottom is a flyer that we commissioned a cartoonist, Paul Shin, to do. But I still wanted to work with them. I was like, there must be a way that I could make a product with these guys. So I started talking to Harry, and he's been working with ocean plastics. So at the time I was talking to him, he was actually often like in the middle of the ocean on an island somewhere, which didn't help. That made it quite difficult. And he was gathering all this plastic out of the ocean and turning it into products, mostly like chairs and stools and things. And but through talking to him, I realized that with my budget and kind of resources, it would be very difficult to make anything that was like kind of low order quantities, the material itself limited what you could do with it, because it's still a relatively new kind of thing. I was thinking about pocket money toys, but actually people don't know the kind of long-term safety of all this like reclaimed plastic. So I was a bit like, oh, what am I going to do? And as it happened, he ended up getting a job in a big company, so I couldn't work with him anyway. But I was still kind of like, I still want to really do something. And I was looking at this image by Norman Thelwell, and it occurred to me that the cow would be quite a good jigsaw because you could divide up all the pieces. And as it happened, and again, it was pure like fluke, chance, I happened to speak to someone who worked for a company where they were using reclaimed timber. So I was like, oh, great, maybe we could do a jigsaw together. And they were really keen. They really wanted to work with museums because they hadn't really done that before. So we sat down and chatted about it. Seemed like it would be good. We went away and then basically said the reclaimed timber would split if it was cut. And we would have to use plywood instead. And I was like, oh, I don't really know if that's sustainable. So I Googled it, and it turns out that plywood has formaldehyde in it. So I was like, I can't possibly make a jigsaw that contains formaldehyde. So I did some more research, and it turns out there is plywood which has no chemicals in it, kind of eco-friendly version. So I went back to them and said, can we use that instead? And they were like, you can, but it's going to cost a lot more money. And I'd really wanted this product to be affordable for everyone, because one of the things as well with a lot of green stuff is it's expensive. And although people from poorer backgrounds don't have as big an impact on the environment because of the nature of like not going on holiday abroad and all that kind of stuff, it would still be nice if everyone could make that choice and have products which are green and eco. Anyway, it was like I had to get this product done. I had to get it approved by the Thirlwell estate. The exhibition was about to open. So I was just like, let's just do it. And I decided that I'd make the packaging myself to save money. So I made a box, which I kind of like referenced food packaging for, to explain kind of the idea behind it. And the idea behind it is that I don't want to kind of preach to people what they should or shouldn't do. I don't eat beef, but I do eat meat. And I think that's a personal choice for everyone to make. But by playing with a jigsaw, it's kind of a really gentle way to maybe make people think a bit about where does my food come from? And what was the other thing I was going to say about that? Yeah, it's like in a similar way to what Norman Thirlwell did. So he would make cartoons which are funny, fun, but they make a kind of a point. And then like you've got all the kind of the orange, the red and the green facts, a bit like the kind of health content of food, and they're facts about beef, some good, some bad, some in the middle. And then that's the jigsaw. And also the packaging as well. So I ordered like recyclable cardboard boxes to put it in. And then they came with like a foam kind of thing inside, which I was like, well, that's not eco-friendly, but happened to be very good for protecting the jigsaw. So again, it's like pros and cons. And then I had to price the product quite high. We sold some, not loads. I kind of still think I really like it as a product, but all of the kind of journey and the process that I went on just made me realize the options are not there yet for us. It just took too much time and resources, and I would just not be able to do it if I tried to do that again. It's me first, isn't it?
Yeah.
So to wrap up, what we learned, only through actively trying to act sustainably can we make changes. So have those conversations with your suppliers or consider who is local to you.
We don't need to have like a full strategy behind us to do some of these things. A lot of it's about trying to say yes as much as we can and trying to act holistically across the organisation, from exhibitions to shop to KPIs on staff.
Encourage active participation from your galleries to your shop as a means for visitors to hold you and themselves to account.
And there are benefits to acting sustainably that go beyond strict environmental ones. And I think a lot of the time when we talk about why you should be sustainable, it's always linked to those kind of goals. But in terms of the business, we made a lot of local partners, a lot of local businesses now book us as a venue, for instance. And it gave us an opportunity to engage with our audience in a different way on a different topic.
And you can't always win, but small wins are still wins.
The only way to actually do things is to try. I think that's the main takeaway for us is, we've talked through quite a lot of different examples today, and a lot of it just came from, can we do this? And sometimes we can, and sometimes we can't, but it's important to try. Thank you very much for listening to us, and we happy to have some questions.
That was really good. Thank you. So are there any questions? If you'd like to raise your hand. This one here.
Hi there. Thank you so much. That was really fascinating. Sorry, my name's Laura Chestover. I'm from the British Library. I just wanted to ask if you'd engage schools in any of this work at all.
Yeah, one of the projects we did was a climate change comic that we did with local schools. So again, trying to, sorry, I'll start again because I've just put your earpiece back in. One of the projects that we did as part of this, I kind of skipped over with we did some projects line. We did a climate change comic project with local schools. So engaging directly hyper-local schools with us and working with their students. So there was a picture up on the slide, which is a page from one of the comics. I think it's downloadable from our website. So if you go onto our learning page, we've got free downloads of some of the comics we produce as school and community projects, and that's one of them.
Okay, are there any other one back then?
Hiya, that was great, fascinated. Coming from another small museum, although slightly bigger than yours, yeah, there's a lot to take away. I was really interested when you were thinking about using the eco vinyl and how you said it kept peeling off the walls and actually it was quite crap. I imagine that you might have fed that back to the company, and I'm just wondering. I mean, I know I'm not speaking to the company that produces it, but I'm kind of wondering. I wonder if you think what they might be doing to try and change that, because obviously making these eco choices in what we do with our exhibitions is really, really important, because everyone uses a lot of vinyl in these exhibitions. But I'm kind of wondering what is the way forward, because if we've got all these eco options that seems great, we should do this is the right thing, but actually it's really crap when you put it into practice. I don't really know what the question is here, but I'm kind of
I mean, we did feedback to them. One of the kind of key points that came back was the cost was broadly prohibitive to make it any better. So like I kind of mentioned, the technology is not really there yet. And they were, to be fair, a little bit sort of ambivalent about doing it in the first place. It was something we sort of pushed them into because it's not something they offer as standard. So they had to go and source off how to go about doing it. But they're a company, again, walking distance to us that we use quite regularly. So they were open to the conversation. So that was kind of benefit to be able to have that conversation at least. But it's not something that's like, oh, now we suddenly offer this all the time and it's high quality. I would hope they are working in the background on it.
Okay, anybody else? No? So that draws the session to a close. If you can leave your little green boxes behind and keep your earpiece, please. And if you can show your appreciation to Ollie and to Joe, fantastic.
Thank you.